Hello, everybody, and welcome to my podcast, New Skin. Whether you're coming from my music channel or whether you're new here, I want to welcome you and thank you for listening to this. I'm really excited. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, and God knows, there's not enough podcasts out there. So I wanted to make another one. So, what the hell does New Skin mean? Like I said, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've gone through some revolutionary changes the past probably year and a half. And as I go through that, I recognize other people that are going through a lot of changes, and I pick up on those frequencies and those levels throughout spectrums and ever evolving things like that. And I'm very excited to hear people's stories of perseverance, people's experiences of trauma and suffering, and what turned them into who they are. I'm a big person that loves to read biographies and hear people's, triumphs and hear people's everything, just the kind of stuff that they went through. So, the actual reason, the thing that really struck me to create this, and I'm going to have this person on the podcast here really soon, was I met somebody in an Ulta. It's a makeup store, and they were, I'm guessing they were gay. Very beautiful makeup, and we all had masks on, but a rather feminine person. And at some point we were getting along very well. I tend to get along with people on that spectrum very, very well, and I love them so much. I don't know if it's because I'm more of a feminine person or just because I'm more empathic and sensitive, but anyway, I always have. And at one point he said that he grew up with a military father that moved around all the time. And my mind was reeling just because I made a joke after that, because I was like, well, that had to be ridiculous. Imagining a militant father that's very prideful of doing all those things, having a son that is a makeup artist and wears, beautiful makeup and hair and all these kinds of things. Normally there's obviously a pretty big juxtaposition, like a pretty big thing there that's gonna have a story attached to it that's probably amazing and probably very difficult. And to see somebody like that standing in their power, and it just makes you want to be in your power and do whatever the hell you want to do and look however the hell you want to look and say whatever you want to say. These people that are doing these things are amazing, and so brave to do what they're doing, and just to be who they are, and hopefully they recognize that. I sure as hell recognize that. So anyway, I'm excited to hear their stories. I'm excited to hear your stories. If you want to write to me, sterlingrjackson.com. As I continue this, I'd be happy to read those stories and either get you on the podcast or read some of those things out online while I'm doing the podcast. As long as they're not like, 8 pages long. I know, and sometimes they should be and they need to be, but it has to work with the medium that I'm doing here, of course. Anyway, like I said, New Skin. It's me stepping into being who I am. It's all of us collectively moving into these new paradigms, whether it's spiritual awakening, whether it's whatever the hell it is. It's us moving forward into these new places and these new systems of thought and belief that we need to be in. And so the first person that I got to talk to, or wanted to talk to, is a friend of mine named Ritchi Ray. A great musician, great storyteller, very kind, sensitive soul, and a really great story of growing up and dealing with a lot of difficulty and struggle, and persevering and using music as an outlet and all kinds of great things like that. So it was a real honor to speak to him and to have him tell me a lot of these stories, because a lot of them are very attached to family and religious things and his culture and where he grew up. He's Irish. And sometimes these stories are not easy for people to talk about. Sometimes having an alcoholic father that was violent and things like that, that stuff's really hard. And sometimes people are afraid that information is just going to simply get back to family members and stuff, and they're gonna be like, you can't fucking talk about that, you piece of shit. And it's like, no, these things are important. Your story is powerful. And I've recognized that as I've moved forward as well, that I don't want to say it as simple as this, because I know it's not, but in some ways I think it kind of is. And social media and things like this. All this kind of stuff can be very, very toxic and can be very, very bad. And it is for a lot of people, especially, the young people that are going down the rabbit hole all the time. And we're essentially trying to understand what it means to have another version of ourselves that's out there, that exists, which is a digital version of ourselves, that stays alive through time. You put something up 10 years ago and people see it that day and they're like, this person's awesome. It's like, no, that was like a decade ago. But we're still trying to understand what that means to have a digital self. So as we move forward with these new things that we don't quite understand yet, and the toxicity of them and things like that, I think that a lot of people are kind of given a choice if they want to take part in it, whether they can choose to inspire people with their story, with something they're doing. You could paint watercolors with your feet on the ceiling, and people would be inspired by that. They'd be like, that's badass. I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting here watching TV. Like, you can choose to inspire people by doing something and sharing something and being positive in a way, or you can kind of not, and that's fine too. Like if your work or you're helping people or whatever, however you're choosing to, but if you're going to be engaged in this digital realm in a sense, I think that it's really it's kind of a choice whether you can really inspire people. So I'm choosing, as I've been a musician for 14 years, I think it's been, and I've taught people how to sing for about 10 years, and I've done a lot of stuff. I've released 6 albums, soon to be 7, and music is very strange. It's very hard to break through and to reach a lot of people. And I've gotten a lot of emails and things and a lot of kind comments and wonderful stuff like that. But I have more to give, and I want to give more. And one of the funniest things, and then I'll finally get on to this first interview. One of the funniest things that I've seen is that when I've shared videos of personal stories or things that I thought would help people, a lot of times if I put them up on my music page, some people responded very positively, but I would just watch my subscriber count go down and down and down. People unsubscribe. And I understand that if you're signing up or subscribing to a channel, you want to see a certain content. And if you're subscribed to a music channel with some red-haired person, and then Oprah's on there all of a sudden talking about her feelings, you'd be like, I don't know, what the hell, and unsubscribe. I understand that. So that's why I've created different channels for these things, so that I can be of help to other people in different capacities. It is rough to completely start from zero, but it's just like anything else. So anyway, I'm hoping that I can be of service to more people. I'm hoping I can connect to people. And what I was saying was that I would receive a lot of bad feedback sometimes from people that be like, you shouldn't share this stuff. We keep our emotions to ourselves as musicians, and all kinds of weird, ignorant stuff. And all of my music is exactly me sharing very personal, very difficult things, but then putting a melody over top so it sounds nice. And this podcast is not about that. There will be no melodies. No, it's about just being empowered with sharing your story and being empowered by talking about things, and letting that be okay. Something I wrestle with is beating myself up all the time throughout many different waves of all kinds of things, and guilt and shame. And I've carried a lot of that through my life. And one thing that helps me is simply talking about stuff and feeling like it's okay to not only feel the ways that you feel, because other people are feeling those ways, but then sharing those things. And I find that collectively that brings people's vibration up, that brings people into a better space of togetherness. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So, New Skin podcast. So here's Ritchi Ray and we talked for quite a while about his upbringing and his story. And I really do hope you appreciate it and enjoy it. And I will see you soon, as I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. So thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for joining me here. It has been quite a number of years that we've been communicating. And I guess we'll start off a little bit with, how you found me, because it is kind of an interesting thing in terms of us both being musicians, but in that you did not find me for that purpose, but then we kind of connected through a lot of different things like that. So Like I said, first of all, Ritchi Ray, a wonderful musician, friend of mine. I'm very excited to be able to talk to him in this capacity and on these emotional levels and all these different kinds of things. And I want to thank you for tapping into those emotional things and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, I remember you found me through a depression video that I posted. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now how do you come by that in terms of, you know, you're not sitting around on the internet on YouTube like, I'm depressed. I bet there's other people that are depressed on YouTube that want to talk about being depressed.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, not at all. I think it was down to like whatever algorithms happen on YouTube that we like, possibly just like the similar things, or I was in, I don't know for sure, but yeah, I think, I don't know how, to be honest, but I'm glad I did. I'm super glad that I clicked the video. I have a close affinity in the fields, as you know, with those types of things, and that most of my music, even though, yeah, I do. My brain somehow goes there, but not in the way you would think. More in a compassion sense. So when I seen you, I was like, I'm gonna damn well watch this video. See what this guy's talking about.
He seems like a kindred depressed spirit.
and yeah, and I watched the video and I was like, I connect with this absolutely. On lot, you know, as you well know, there's like some things you watch and you'll connect with 5% of what's happening, and it can be enough to keep you around or not. But I guess when I was watching your video in particular, you know, and I don't make a habit of watching videos at all, but when I watched your video, I was like, this is the most genuine stuff I've seen in a long time.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, and it was true. We all live in this world of like weeding out the bullshit and and like having that snappy decision of 5 seconds and I'm out. But no, I clicked on the video, watched it, and like I say, I was damn well proud of myself that I got through it all without shedding a tear, because it was really moving, that video.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of wanting to start a podcast and things like that, a lot of times when I talk about stuff like depression or things that I want to go on talk about, you know, I'll ask a couple friends of mine and they'll be like, don't do that, man. Like that, don't do that. You're going to ruin whatever it is that you have going, which is not much anyway. But there's some part of me that is, well, of course, rebellious in nature anyway, but there's some part of me that pushing back against that, I want to come out and be able to talk about all these suffering and traumatic things and depression and autism and all kinds of stuff, like, because I feel that taboo nature of it, and I want to be able to bring it out into the light, mostly because, let's be honest, as musicians, a lot of times we're creating things because we're trying to heal and there's stuff we got to say. So what if we just got rid of the musical melody elements and just came out and said that shit? It's funny how people react. Sometimes people, when I've done that, they're like, we don't do this kind of thing as musicians. We don't bring our dirty laundry out and start airing it. And you're like, that's what I've been doing for years in music, except I make it sound like nice. So yeah. So anyway, I think there's a power to it, and there's definitely an empowering feeling for me to be able to do it. And there's also just a great, like, I don't care. Like, I just want to be able to talk to people and connect with people. And I think it's great to be able to connect over such traumatic things so that we can heal from it. And being able to open up about it and hear somebody else's story and hear how they've grown. A lot of times I end up feeling like an island and feel like I'm very disconnected. And then you hear these stories from other people and they're like, yeah, this happened to me. And you're like, that is so much worse than what's happened to me. How did you get through that? And they're like, yeah, you know, I did this and that. And you're like, Jesus. So we'll start off here. I didn't know if you wanted to tell everybody your legal name, because it's, in my opinion, it's awesome, but I can't pronounce it. You are a glorious Irishman. and you're born in Ireland, right? Yes, indeed.
Sorry, I'm so distracted by this silly light now.
Oh, is it trying to ruin your?
It's all good. Now we're back. Yeah, born and bred Irishman, still here. Very well traveled Irishman, but yeah. My legal name in English is Ritchi McGuire. In Irish, it's Richard McCudra.
Richard Macudra.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. I love it. So you were born in Ireland. You were born in what, like 85?
85, yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly the best year ever.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Or this whole thing wouldn't be happening right now. So tell me, were you somebody that moved around a lot, or were you somebody that lived in like the same house growing up for a long time?
Oh yeah, I'm fiercely proud of where I come from. I come from a little place in a town called Cookstown in County Tyrone. It was named the RGS, and that's basically Ratheen, Greenvale, Sornboy, but we mixed it into one. That won't mean anything to you, I'm aware of that, but so yeah, we really poor working class upbringing, as most of the people around us did. So that made like a real community vibe, kind of what you would imagine in, I guess, the poor Bronx or something like that. Like, is how my brain imagines it. Like somewhere really poor. So so yeah, that's where I come from, and like I say, fiercely proud of it. As are most people that kind of grew up and come away from that.
I find that even with the way that I grew up and the ways that I feel about myself and the world, that anytime that I've had a sense of community anywhere I've gone, it's helped tremendously. And even going to a shop, I tend to be remembered a lot. People are like, it's that guy. And before even the red clown hair, people were like, I remember that guy. And just having people, like I said, that small glimpse of community has done so many things for me. So it doesn't matter if you're poor or if you're anything, it's just so important to be able to go outside and be like, hey man, how you doing? Like those things are really, really wonderful. So you grew up small community. And like I said, were you somebody that grew up in the same kind of house, or did your parents move around a lot, or, at least even to different houses? Or did you guys have like, this is where my grandparents lived, this is where your granddaddy lived, built it with his hands?
Yeah, no, same house. So my dad still lives there, and my brother. So yeah, same house growing up. I left pretty early. I got itchy feet, so and through one thing and another, aspired to get away, because as much as I'm fiercely proud of being where I'm from,
yeah,
no way was I staying there.
Right.
And I mean that with the most love possible, because being where I'm from can only fill you with the want to do better. Because I don't remember fondly being poor. I don't remember fondly being hungry. I don't remember fondly any of these things.
Yeah.
What I remember fondly is how much fun the people that I surrounded myself with had.
Yeah.
And it eliminated those things that made me want more. Not eliminate, subdued them for a time, because you have to have time to be a child. You have to be allowed to have fun. So there was that. But yeah, I mean, like the first chance I got, I was outie.
Were people Go ahead.
It's kind of strange to hear the community thing. It happens in phases. So when I go back there might be people on my street that remember me, but all of the other kids who might have just been born or possibly weren't even born when I was there, they don't know who I am.
Yeah.
But listen, and it is what it is. It's like I said, it's stages of growing up. But yeah, the town I'm from in general is pretty big in comparison to towns. but yeah, totally awesome. But like I say, there's no revel in suffering. There's growth, but there's no revel. So you don't hang about there too often.
Right.
Not unless you're some form of deviant and you absolutely love suffering.
Well, I'd imagine a community like that, at least conscious of itself, would be kind of rooting for everybody to get out and do things and
Yeah,
go, you
totally.
go make your dreams happen. Don't stay here. Don't stay here. Is that
Yeah.
is that apparent?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. There is.
Or,
There
or
definitely.
do people get upset when you leave? Or people are like, you're going to leave us? Is it?
Oh no. I mean, I don't think I was a second thought in anybody's.
Oh,
But my family's. You know. Um. But I mean, I have lots of family who emigrated, so it's there is a thing in Irish culture of emigrating to greener lands, which is strange because Ireland is probably the greenest place on earth. But that aspiration to do better and to go and really cut your teeth on the earth, on this planet, somewhere else, or as people say, go make a name for yourself. Um, so there's that element to it, and yeah, I mean, I hung about. I moved out of where I was from and hung about in the town for a little while until it was glaringly obvious that. I mean, I don't live too far now where I'm from. There's 10 miles between us, but there was a huge period in that spell of 15, 16, 17 years of self-discovery, and and I should say there's lots of people who go do that in not just my town or specifically where I was raised inside that town, but yeah, you'll not find too many people who stay in the same place and who are either A, happy, or or B, like have some glimmer of success or happiness in what they're doing. Yeah.
I find a lot of people that tend to stay in places like that are either getting through it by complaining about it and complaining about like this togetherness of like, fuck this place and stuff like that, or they're vicariously living through their children going and doing other things and stuff like, she's out there, she's living her dream, she's having, and you can tell that inside they're empty, but they're just like, he's playing football, he's the greatest, he's so smart, have I told you how smart he is, he's so smart. So you said your father still lives in, okay, so your parents, I think we might have talked about this before, but of course, this is the kind of deeper, dramatic stuff I'd love to get into. Yeah. So you grew up with, you have a brother. Do you have any other siblings?
I have what you would call an Irish family. There are 13 people in my household.
How is that?
The fuck?
That doesn't make any sense.
Hey, so let me build you a little construct of what I'm talking about here. Yeah, to keep it on a level playing field that you might understand, because the politics of Northern Ireland and the north of Ireland and Ireland in general is very, very sketchy, and one I'm not too sure I want to get into to be safe.
Right.
But yeah, so my family, I was raised in what you would call socialist housing, social housing, which was the only, hey dog, which was the only, well, not the only, but an area that was made available to Catholics.
Right.
So we were raised there, and yeah, my family are a big family, and in the town there are maybe one of two big families.
Yeah, pretty strong Catholicism ties there, where people are just having lots of babies.
Yeah, legitimate, and people of a different persuasion would have seen it as breeding the next nation. But yeah, so in my house, and I mean, I lived in what you call a 2 up, 2 down. So I'm sure that term's relevant everywhere around the world.
It isn't. I have no idea. It
uh,
sounds like it's probably not going to be anybody's favorite thing. I know like a duplex, but you're talking about like the floor you lived on or the.
yeah. I mean, imagine a row of homes, 2 floors, with a kitchen, a living room, a tiny hallway to the front door,
Right.
a bathroom. There was 2 bathrooms, but we had to knock a bathroom away downstairs, take it away so that there was more room in the kitchen, and a tiny box room, kind of like the one that I'm in right now, and 2 other bedrooms upstairs. And my dad, who was a joinery by trade, a carpenter in America, which was really handy because it was needed.
Right.
So he built bunk beds in all the rooms.
Right.
That could sleep us. So yeah, body heat was at a maximum around 95.
Yeah. When it's a family like that, is there any point where they're like, this is enough? Or is that just not the way it works, where they're like, God wants us to populate the earth and we're going to keep on doing it?
Yeah. And
I mean, you don't have to tap into that too deep, of course, but it is odd, like how you get to the, how do you get to the award-winning number of 13 and then, not just push it to 14? Is somebody like, you know what, I'm kind of tired. I don't really want to do this anymore. Like where, how do you get to that stopping point, Rich?
Well, my mom was, I think 40 or 41 when she had her last child.
Right.
And I think it was more, I have to say, mom just loved kids.
Right.
I mean, you have to have that innate sense of motherhood, and so I think that was the forefront reason why all of this happened. More than God wants us to do it, but there was that element there too. But yeah, so that, I think that was like the forefront. But yeah, there was another family pretty close to us who had 17, and
then you just hated them and fought them and threw things at their house because they were winning.
No, they were all like a bit older, a bit older than us, and had all moved up and moved on to their own families and things. And same with ours. And my older brother and sister had grown up and left the house. So yeah, but yeah, like fun times. And I have to say, anytime I choose to look back, I only remember fun things. Of my brothers and sisters. I could choose to remember a lot of other things also.
That tends to be where I'm probably going to push. I will say though, there is an interesting thing to be said, and not that we need to dive into that path, but it's funny when somebody has like 2 or 3 kids are bound to say at some point, am I the favorite? Is she the favorite? And of course there's going to be favoritism and certain things that happen for certain people, and certain people that receive more love and affection, and certain people that don't, certain people that get bitched at more, all that kind of stuff. When you have 13 people in a house like that, there's got to be different things like that, just waves of those things happening, where he got new pants for school and I don't have any pants to, there's got to be levels and levels of those things, right?
Yes. I'm a twin. Okay. So, and me and my twins Rudy, so we're Rudy and Ritchi, and we literally fall bang smack in the middle of age. And as you may or may not know, middle children are forgotten about. And it's like, man, that was tough. That was tough growing up, and always feeling like, hey, I'm not being heard here at all. So then that's when it was, So there's a thing that happens in families, and it's literally pack animals. You find your place and you shut the fuck up.
Yes.
As brutal as that sounds, I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to have this out with anybody who disagrees in my household, but like that is legitimately how it is. You're told, like, and it didn't stop me from probably mouthing off at a time or whenever or whatever.
Yeah.
But but what's weird about my family is that we're all pretty strong. We're all pretty strong-minded.
Yeah.
And some of us are more opinionated than others. And it's just weird to see the dynamic in a family, and it hasn't never really changed.
Right.
Is
it? I'll ask: is it more of a male dominated or female dominated household?
It's split pretty much in the middle.
Wow, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So your parents, okay, we got to the middle child stuff. Those things can be traumatic just enough in their own. Your parents were married and they got divorced at some point, or they still when did that happen?
Oh, a long time ago now.
Right.
But yeah, in many ways it seems like yesterday. But yeah, they got divorced and life played its hand, and
how old how old were you?
14.
Right.
14.
So you said it, I mean, obviously if you're saying it feels like it was just yesterday, the event itself or the leading up to it, like where does that come from when you say, it feels like it was yesterday?
Well, the reason why I say it feels like it was yesterday is because there are certain things that are still very much awry in between segments of the household. But yeah, I mean, wow. So I think that's where it comes from, is that I know that we are very, like I just mentioned about the characteristics of the household.
Yeah.
One's pretty much, like pro mom, and then like one's pretty much pro dad, and and like, have you ever heard the term fighting Irish?
Yeah.
That comes from some, so there's that.
Right.
But yeah, it happened a long time ago. In what you might consider to be formative years of like just breaking into being a teenager and like trying to figure out what your place is in life, and because you understand pretty quickly that your place in a family is to be quiet and stay there and don't speak until you're spoken to, and don't step out of line, all this stuff, and you're like, what the fuck, like, what is happening, like, all of this stuff that was supposed to be written in some form of family law is now just been fucked out the window. and
fucked out the window.
And now everything's like, hey, remember all of that stuff?
Yeah.
That's all done now.
Yeah.
That's gone.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and now you're picking up the pieces of your own bullshit, because and that's pretty much how it's been ever since.
So was there, let me try to figure out how to ask this. Was there a leading up to it that everybody could see, where was there a small like victory, like, hooray, this is going to be over? Or was it completely blindsided? For me, I had absolutely no idea. I was about 10 or 11 and it was completely blindsided. I never saw my parents fight. I never saw anything happen. And then all of a sudden one day we had that conversation and me and my brother were both just like, what the fuck is happening? Were you guys blindsided, or was there buildup? Was there any kind of communication of like, this might happen? Or,
I mean, okay, so yeah, no, there was lots of signs and lots of direct. I come from a family that is not afraid to speak and say what's happening, and like very much like, so from that I've learned to shield my kids and shield and just be just be, I don't know what the word is, or even if it's right or not. It's just what's happening is what's happening. But in that period, it was okay. So there's lots of rows happening. There's lots of fights. There's lots of alcohol. There's things happening. Mum. So my mum lost her mum a few years before that, and I have to say, like, my family were big and strong and tight and full of love, and like mum had us always dressed to the nines and doing things, and we always, like whatever it was great. That's how I remember it. And
Right.
and then my mum's mum passed away, and everything changed.
That's
Everything changed.
Is it because she changed kind of fundamentally, losing that
Oh
that
yeah.
rock in her life? So she kind of changed emotionally, and things just took a turn.
A once full of life woman that I knew was always smiling and always happy to do things and great, so loving and so great with kids, fell into a deep, dark depression and didn't come out of the house and hid away and was bedbound and like literally, I'm okay speaking about it now, but for a long time I wasn't, because I kind of grew up with my mom being in bed, and it was like, So you can probably hear my kids in the background.
Quite all right. It's all 13 of them.
Yeah, yeah. We just have a conveyor belt. So yeah, that's kind of that's what sparked what I believed. As an adult looking into it, that's what sparked the end.
The beginning of the end.
But
were you able to kind of tap into, or I mean, it could still be kind of painful, but were you able to tap into what it was that your mother kind of had with her mother, and then what she lost, and maybe, there's a lot of stuff you could unpack there, but
yeah, I mean, like, obviously trying to be as respectful as I can, and also tell a story in the same sense is very difficult because, but yeah, I mean, they were. We have a saying here: "As thick as thieves,"
right,
which is they're super close, so
right,
close. I mean, my mom's mom moved to like within 100 yards of where we lived.
yeah,
So then this is like years before she passed, but that only served to concrete the love and the togetherness that existed. But yeah, so when she lost that, it was like she literally, somebody cut her in half.
yeah,
Because and even though she tried to be strong and she tried to, like, other things happened in around it. Uh, Possibly one of the main reasons why I am the way I am, and I abstain from certain things, is because I've seen it destroy my family.
yeah.
So I'm like, nah, I've seen that. No, thank you. So definitely alcohol was one of those big things.
Yeah, we were definitely going to get into that because, if we've talked a little bit, not very much at length of those certain things, and of course you can talk as much or as little as you want. But to stay on the topic of your mom, like, how long did those things last? How long was she kind of bedridden and just really emotionally traumatized from that?
Yeah, it seemed like a long time, but it was definitely years. It was definitely
Christ.
years.
Yeah.
And all this time, things are like we're being a big noisy family with life and going to school and coming home from school and doing these things, and I'm probably doing a disservice by saying, but yeah, like, everything had changed. I just remember that distinctly, that nothing was ever the same again. And
Boy, so what do you mean when you say you might be doing a disservice? You mean to your mother?
yeah, but I mean, it only serves to speak truth about, the depths of and the the complexities of depression, which is probably why I stopped to listen to your video. It was like, right. And because I've kind of made it my mission to be we spoke about this before, but to be as understanding in life of these things as possible, because especially where I come from, you can be written off very quickly with these things. Oh, that's a head case, that, and don't worry about that. You know, all of these different types of things, you can be written off too quickly. And I think people have been written off, and I watched my mother getting written off, and I think that's why I tend to be a little bit, well, a lot more caring.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's funny, even, you know, across oceans, having these conversations about certain topics like this, where our parents grew up, and if somebody was dealing with depression or dealing with, God knows, a lot of different issues, it didn't even make sense. It didn't register. It was just like, hey, what's going on there? Why are you being a grumpy puss or whatever? Hopefully it wasn't that bad. But somebody referred to my mother recently. I was talking to a psychic, and they were tapping into some crazy things about my family and my growing up and everything. And they were referring to my mother as somebody that deals with depression. And it was funny that I'm going to be 37 years old here in a week. You don't think of your parents that way until you get old enough, I guess, or you're able to comprehend on different levels, or not see them as these adults and you're a kid. But I never thought of my mother as somebody that dealt with depression. She never has used that word. She's never, it's amazing. So that's another reason why we're having these conversations, is to keep bringing these things out into the light, because it's amazing. 60, I think she's 63. And yeah, I just always thought about her as this rock, this strong woman. And then I'm this messed up kid. But no, she's dealing with the same shit we're all dealing with, and different levels of it, and all kinds of things. And she had a tremendously difficult life. So, and I guess in one way I can understand trying to be respectful and being kind of nervous that you might be doing a disservice or saying the right or wrong things about them. But in another way, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful realization to recognize that your parent was going through stages of depression, and then you may have inherited that, and that you might, be able to come together on those things later in life or some other time in life, and be able to bond over them and be like, holy shit, do you know what you were going through was what we now, us new age kids, refer to as depression? Do you know you were, depressed? And I don't know, I find that crazy interesting. So now we're talking about your family and growing up, and you've mentioned this before, and like I said, however not deep you want to go on it, you said about your father being somebody that was dealing with alcoholism a lot. First of all, is he somebody that still deals with that? Is it something that's kind of an ongoing, dad might be drunk right now type of thing?
Yeah, well, I have to say, it was always weekend, living for the weekend thing.
Right.
So like through the week it was work. My dad was a very, very tough man, very hard worker, done everything that he could to support us and my mum. And because, as well, he was one man working, bringing in money to feed all of his children, to keep them, a roof over their head, to make sure bills were paid. Him and my mum still done that. And as much as I might bitch and moan about how little I had, and if it wasn't for hand-me-downs and these types of things, I would never have anything. And I'm just reminded about my older brother who got a job and went out and worked and came back with new clothes, and like literally that night he would have seen me wearing them somewhere, and then that was a fight.
Yeah.
hey, that's my, yeah. And the problem for me was that he was bigger and faster than I was. But yeah, like alcohol definitely destroyed my family.
And I can understand that, I understand to the best of my ability, somebody carrying that much weight and then them needing some form of escapism. And that statement doesn't even sum it up, but we're all reaching for forms of escapism a lot of times because we feel the weight of the world. And I don't even know if I can imagine,
Well, I mean, it's very important for me to try and paint this picture. Okay, so where I come from, if I just cast my memory back to those times, I come from a place where Catholics weren't were second class citizens, especially around the areas that I was. There was a thing called the Troubles, which everybody knows, maybe enough of or not enough of. So there was literal war happening in the county and in the country as a whole. So there was lots of pressures on finding and keeping jobs.
Right.
My dad was very lucky with the guy that he worked with, and it's a testament to my dad and my other fella is that he was a hard worker and he kept his job and he got overtime, all these different types of things. But there was many Catholic men that never found employment, didn't get employment, and had to live on social and this type of thing. That might be like news to people, but where I'm from and with the understanding that I have of these things, I'm very confident to say that because it's factual. It's a factual thing. So, not, and this isn't for anybody listening to this. This isn't a bitter statement, or this isn't sectarianism or anything like that. It's just a fact. So there was lots of men from a nationalist persuasion that couldn't find work.
Yeah.
So there was also, and so anybody in work was very aware. I have to keep this job. I have to stay here. So there was all that type of pressure. There was all the troubles that were happening. And I have to emphasize, it was a horrible time to be alive and to be coming up, because like the place that I lived had 2 giant blockades in the entrance and 2 giant blockades on the exit. So no cars could come in or out. And there was an army barracks 100 feet from where I lived.
Oh God.
With an eye in the sky that watched everything. There was police checkpoints everywhere in County Tyrone, but more so Cookstown, because the army barracks was there. There was helicopters constantly flying past. There was the British Army walking in through the estates, as we called it, 2, 3, 4 times a week. And our front garden was dug up maybe twice a month, looking for things. I mean, it was a crazy time to be alive. But so as a kid growing up, you're like, oh cool, look at the dude with the gun. Hey, can I look through your rifle? And my dad was like, get away.
Yeah.
Because they weren't welcome is the point. And so, but now as an adult looking back, I'm like, my mom and dad were under so much pressure, and the families around were under so much pressure just to be alive.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Just to even make money. And then not to mention, we've all had a job where you work with somebody you don't like. What if you worked with people you didn't like, or you were under the thumb of a boss that was a real piece of shit, but then you had to do everything you could do to keep that job? Once again, it's amazing. And you could understand alcoholism coming into play. Now, when you talk about that, it's going to seem kind of, I understand the idea of the disrespectful nature, but I'm interested in you as a person, in your culture and the way you grew up and stuff as well, but mostly interested in you as a person, as an individual, as a growing, spiritual soul, like how these things have affected you and how they've affected you for the better and how they've affected you for the worse, how you're able to look back at them and recognize that you're going to move forward. Obviously, one of the things that comes to mind when I hear a story like you said is that getting mad at your kids I don't have kids yet, but a lot of people tend to get mad at their kids and have the same conversation of like, do you know what I had when I grew up and you got all this? And there's completely, obviously you can see completely different sets of circumstances happening between what you grew up with and what your kids are growing up with now. You know, they might cry when their iPad doesn't work right. And you're like, what the fuck? What, you know, because of the things that you were dealing with. But still, when we talk about, you know, your father and alcoholism and having that ruined, I'm guessing that he was somebody that was filled with, you know, anger or resentment or you know, it was a violent type of thing, or was it something that was emotionally traumatizing, or was it physically, or did it, you know, can you talk about it at all?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can, yeah, I grew up in a household where I would have got beat and slapped in a heartbeat.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's just because I grew up in it. And by the way, my family, my brothers, sisters, everybody was under the same roof.
Right.
And it was very much a prevalent thing. And it might have been a sign of the times. So it might have been more acceptable back then to, I don't know, break a chair over somebody's back for standing out of line, or I mean, but yeah, I mean, because I still live in the area, I still know that it's still very much alive in people's homes, and I can't fathom it. I cannot fathom it.
Yeah, I guess it's, you know, it's I don't even know how to break it down, but in some ways it seems like the last resort of trying to teach somebody something or get them to pay attention. But especially when there's that many people in a small house and stuff, there's not much you can do to educate somebody other than just to quickly go to anger and quickly go to frustration and start smacking people and things. You know, there isn't the sit down, have a timeout. There's just like, you're supposed to be over there, you're supposed to be doing that, shut the fuck up. And you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, but the compassionate side of me instantly goes to, okay, so right, let's decompartmentalize all this. All of these stresses were just a finger click away from being the thing that day. Okay, now this is the thing.
Yeah.
So we have all of these different things at play. Now looking back, I understand that thinking something through mightn't have, like, I mean, which is weird because my dad was very good at like sitting down on a Saturday and writing down, you know, like betting on horses and things like that. So he and that would have been like methodical for him because his dad did it, you know, and that was their thing. That was their that and fishing. So it was so weird, you know, when I look back on it, to be mentored and guided by somebody that I feared.
Yeah.
But who taught me so much.
This is such a common story. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I look back on it, I'm like, I loved all that, but I definitely could have done without this part. You know, so definitely less of this. So as an adult, I took that forward. I was like, okay, definitely none of this and all of this, you know. But yeah, you have to set boundaries and you have to set rules because, but again, it was like you have to understand where I came from, how my dad grew up. My dad grew up where he couldn't walk from his house to where he drank, which was literally 100 feet, without getting stopped by soldiers and having his socks and his shoes taken off.
Good God.
The butt of a rifle pressed up against the back of his head when he was against the wall. And I mean, it was pure hatred, man. It was pure hatred, but it was real. And in order to move on and to grow from these things, we have to accept that they happened.
Yeah.
It was a real thing. So my dad grew up in a place that didn't want him.
Yeah.
So he instilled in his kids, hey, listen, this world is a fucking nasty place. And it's going to chew you up and spit you out. So you better stand up straight and act right. Okay. So that now that I'm older, I know that was his mentality. Was no matter how hard I beat you, will never be as hard as how much life's going to beat you.
Yeah.
So there was this man, and man, it's chills talking about it, because I'm looking back and I'm like, again, I could have done with less of all that and more of that, because as a person, I was never, as a kid, you're there's so much of us, so I can understand that. Hey,
Yeah.
shut the fuck up. Okay, I can understand it, but it would have been nice for somebody to say, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then I would have been like, hey, listen, I'm good at taking directions. Please stop beating me. I will listen, but then again, I was a wee tearaway and a wee shite as a child, like, so, and whatever trouble there was, we all actively tried to seek it out. So
right. That was going to be my next question was were you somebody that was constantly berated with that kind of violent outcome, or were you somebody that kind of laid low and saw your other siblings kind of going through it more, or were you the top tier, like, dad's gonna get me today, I'm gonna go hide in the small room, bathroom, whatever you said was downstairs?
there was no hiding.
There's no hiding. Yeah, right when you hear the footsteps come in the door, I've heard this.
And I say this, and I remember, like, many times looking out the back into the back square of my bedroom, looked out onto the back square of where we grew up, and literally always there was some parent chasing some child. It was just a thing. It was like, Jesus, these winds, I can't get them under control.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I mean, if it wasn't like the older boys who you were fighting, or even where I'm from, there was like many rival cliques. So if you came from the bottom estate, you hated the top estate, and vice versa. And if you ever met, there was fights, and that was it. And you're like, seeing them on a Monday morning and screaming, how's it going? But on a Saturday, you were tearing lumps out of each other. And it's just weird, man. It's just one of them things, I mean, like, as adults, I meet and see all of these people on a regular basis, and it's like, what a ride that was! What a ride, man!
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, so just to kind of try to wrap up some of the parental stuff in a sense, it's definitely amazing for me as well to get older and to see these things in such different color and light, and to see your parents, especially to look back and see episodes of violence and alcoholism, and to kind of look back and have more of an understanding instead of just an anger, a resentment, a grudge, which I know some of that stuff's still going to be there in different ways, and things always can get pushed too far, and did get pushed too far, like, breaking a chair over somebody. That's a tough one. But well, to start with your father, I mean, how old is he now? He's probably 60s.
Early 60s.
Right. So same here.
Yeah.
Is he somebody that you can communicate with, or that is there any kind of mutual respect or trust, or is it just kind of like, dad lives over there, I have to see him? You tell me about it.
I mean, like I say, it's a fun one, this, because, like, I have a huge respect for both my parents,
of course,
but going through, just like my particular case, I didn't agree with a lot of things that happened in my household. And looking back as an adult and a fully functioning sentient being who is compassionate and likes to have as much information as at hand before I make an informed decision,
right?
Especially something that can impact somebody else, or if there's threat of violence, which thankfully doesn't occur very often, but if there's threat of violence, I would like, hold on, let's just everybody calm down. And whereas I guess there is resent there, because I've seen a lot of things happen, a lot of things said, which I knew to be untrue, which caused a lot of things, a lot of hurt, a lot of hate, a lot of division.
Right.
So there's that. But yeah, I don't have an active relationship with my father at all. I haven't spoken to him for a long, long time.
How long is a long, long time? Because people take that very differently.
Well, I was at I was at my grandfather's funeral,
Mm.
and that was the first time I'd seen him from my daughter was born.
Right.
My daughter is 9, and
Okay.
he has seen her once and hasn't seen my boys.
Right.
But it's just one of these things, and like it's just one of these things, man.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I mean, is it something where he's the type of prideful man that's not going to, I mean, obviously, if you're going almost decades without seeing or getting communication, is he somebody that tries to reach out or tries to be
Hell no.
No, okay.
Hell no.
I
I mean,
understand those situations too. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for, I mean, like it's a thing inside my family. Like once that connection was broken inside my family, of so yeah, what the hell with it? I'll give you a little bit of information. So once mom and dad split, there was a connection and a disconnect in the family. And some people was like, so my mom went away. She left us.
So wait, so she had a period of, oh, she had the bedridden thing and stuff, and then that toppled the marriage, and then she kind of, I guess, got some of her bearings.
Then a computer was brought into the household for the first time ever to help the boys in their GCSEs in their exams.
Right.
Okay, and we never sat on it once. It was used for chat rooms and different things,
Right.
and like all of these things. And I suppose it's only fair that I be as truthful as possible to the actual story, because if anybody's watching and listening to this, and they can take anything away from it, I think it's important that they understand that there's always different ways out. And there's always different ways to think of things.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we get along so well in the first place, is because we tend to be people that are thinking about all these different things from all these different perspectives all the time, and trying to be very fair and honest and truthful with a lot of these things. So yeah, I'm with you.
So and yeah, I appreciate it. And it goes back straight back at you. So yeah, that happened. Then there was a total divide in the family. So certain people in the house didn't speak to dad, and certain people in the house didn't speak to mom. And
right.
through the years that changed, and then connections were indelibly broken.
Was there the typical divorce thing where the father is saying bad things about the mother and kind of turning people against, and then the mother's saying, you know, that definitely happened in my household a lot. And they didn't mean to either, but it's just that they were venting and didn't have close people around, so they were venting to their own children, and then they didn't know that they're just programming their children to be all fucked up. You know, your dad did this, and then, you know, your fucking mom did that, and you're just like
programming. It's the programming, man. And that's one thing that I'm so thankful that me and my wife are connected on, is that programming exists in all forms.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but the negative stuff, because I hate to use the word victim. I hate to use the word victim, but it has its place in what I'm talking about. But because I am directly affected by what we're speaking about, I have an understanding of programming, and I've watched how it has affected my family.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I completely understand the programming part, and how, if done wrong, it can quite literally destroy. I mean, you're talking about young kids here, young kids who have their dreams and aspirations, and in you know, like from my perspective, it was reading magazines, and always music magazines, and always reading about bands in America or bands in somewhere else in Europe, and you're like, you know, and all you have are your dreams. All you have are your dreams.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky that I even had music to keep me sane, because I seen what it did to people who didn't have music, or an outlet, I should say.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that happened. There was a divide, and and yeah, man, there's still a divide. I'm not gonna lie, there's still a divide. So there are lots of working relationships inside the family. There are peacekeepers. Those peacekeepers change. There are intermediates. They change.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things. And I guess there comes a time in your life where you're like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna live my life. If everybody's cool, I'm cool. If we need to talk, let's talk. But in the case of my dad,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I'm like, you know, I just don't know how to. I guess it's something that I'll face somewhere. I guess I have faced it because I've made very informed decisions about my life and about how I want my kids to see the world, you know, and and how I understand it doesn't take very long at all for a child's view or outlook on the world to become really small, really fast.
Yeah.
So my goal with my kids is to keep them safe, um, and to make sure their horizon is big and the way they view the world is open and big, and that nothing can ever be closed off to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that has a big part to play in all the things. And listen, my brothers and sisters are very close to my dad, and he's a great parent and he's a great grandfather.
Yep.
You know, so I'll take nothing away from that. It's just that, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's possibly more a reflection of my character than his, that I can be that cut and dry, you know.
Yeah.
So.
We share the similarity as well. I know there's definitely something a little odd to be said about, especially with different cultures and their basis of how important family and bloodline and he's my brother, you know, and all that kind of stuff is. In American culture, it's apparent, but it's not quite as heavy in terms of if somebody does something that's repeatedly unforgivable in a sense, and you can't really see past it. Instead of continuously showing up and trying to just pretend that it's okay, you need to cut ties because you realize that it's a toxic situation. But there's still other people that are just like, you know, you got to stick around for your family, their blood, you got to see. And it's just like, I don't believe that at all. I think that if there's toxic people in your life, you need to stop pretending, and you need to stop believing this whole bullshit of like, well, they're family. It's like, no, a toxic relationship is toxic across the board. It doesn't matter. Yeah, you might want to try to give it a little bit more energy into trying to make it work if you can, but at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for yourself. And yeah, like you said, maybe at some point you'll come back around and rekindle something, or you can find some common ground to rekindle it on. But yeah, you know, it's better that you're Ritchi Ray and you're doing your thing, and you're raising your children and all that. I want to get into your kids as well.
I mean, well, just to make this point, and I think there are the toxicity in relationships, regardless to whether they're father, son, father, whatever they are. One thing that I've learned is that the time and effort that you're willing to put into these things can always be better spent. And if you remember the dynamic of where I fell in my household as a middle child, not listened to, it didn't, you know, like seriously underestimated on every level. So I have this plan in my mind. I'm like, well, what the fuck's the point of me trying anymore?
Yeah,
like,
so it's affected you in that way.
So my mom listened to her eldest son. I was just considered to be a dreamer, somebody who makes things up in his head and whatever. He'll be all right, though. He's no harm. Yeah, I mean, that's legit. Like, but it's okay to say that now. But when I was a kid, I was like, hey, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that at all.
Yeah.
And it was always like, hey, Ritchie's saying big words again. Look at him thinking he's smart, and like all of these different things. Like, I mean, you can pass it off as like just kids being kids, and you know, and it was, but I mean, it shapes you as a human being as you grow on. You're like, okay.
I want to get into the music thing, especially after what you were just saying about being a middle child, never being listened to. But just a quick little glimpse into it here. Do you think that it definitely plays into it that you were a middle child and you were not listened to, and then you found music as a kind of a voice that might be more heard, or that you could be heard in the world, or that you could, you know, was it ever kind of a catalyst like that that made any sense, or are you just like Elvis has got great hair and I want to do that, or you know?
Yeah, I mean,
He did have great hair, you know.
he did. I mean, he might have ripped. They're gonna piss some people off, but yeah, I think that's the only thing he had going for him. Everything else was stolen. Uh,
Dun, dun.
Viva le Chuck Berry.
There you go.
Yeah,
These things need to be brought out into the light quite often. Yeah.
yes, they do.
He was the white, nice looking face that was able to bring all this, you know, and that's a shame. And it sucks, but you know, it is the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll stay. I could say a lot, but I'll stay on topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think yes to what you're saying, but not consciously. So like there was a subconscious directive that was happening. It was like, I don't necessarily have like life-changing things to say, but I have things to say. And I think it's important. I think it's important in life that you give somebody a space or a medium to express themselves, and to be able to do that without, and I want to say this, kind of without judgment, but not, because I believe judgment is key to growth. But without the nastiness that happens, and the as we all know, it's possibly coming from other people's shortcomings, but there is that thing that exists in life. It's like, I mean, like even when I started playing music, it was like, who the fuck's this guy think he is with a guitar? And you're like, you can't win. I mean, if I carry football boots, I'm shit at football. If I carry, it doesn't matter. It's one of those things. But yeah, the expressive thing, I'm still, that's still forefront of the reason why I do what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely subconsciously, it was like, hey, I need to say these things.
Yeah.
You know, and it was very strange actually, because like a lot of my early songwriting was deep stuff, like stuff, yeah, deep stuff.
So it was deep.
Yeah, pretty deep. And it was, and looking back on it, I was like, you know, like sometimes you like go through old notes, you're like, hey, I wonder if I could get inspired for something.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, holy, how am I still alive, man? What is this? You know? But it was all, but everything, I mean, not like I've ever considered being unalive or anything, but when I'm reading these things, I'm like, I needed help. I needed a fucking hug. I needed a hug, man.
It's okay to feel like you don't want to be alive. I feel that way all the time. It's another reason why I want to talk about these things, because I think it's more powerful to be able to talk about them. But one of the things you said about like, who the fuck does he think he is? It is amazing how much I know that you and I and so many people still go through this. I saw there's a younger guitarist, female guitarist that I follow, and she just shared a thing yesterday where somebody commented and said, I hate that you're doing the cool face thing. You're going to look back years later and you're going to regret it. I hate that you're doing that. And she wrote back and she was just like, what the fuck? And then I sent her a message like, yeah, you have resting cool eyes. And then the guy still wrote back again and said some more nasty things about it. And it's amazing how so much of our culture, and especially probably, I don't know if it's more of a male problem or a female problem, but it's definitely something to be said about every time you want to try to do something and kind of feel comfortable in your skin, somebody's always got to be over here like, you're going to do that? fucking red hair. I'm 37 years old, and I do some of these things.
I love it.
And now I'm starting to now become empowered by the fact that I can do them. And I just don't have enough people around to have people, you know, that fear that somebody's always standing there like, you're gonna paint your nails. Yeah, I actually I love it. It makes me really happy now. And it's not a thing about getting attention. I explained this recently in a video I posted about. I actually don't like attention. It makes me kind of upset that when I do something like this, that I have to go out in public, and I remember that. And I'm like, oh shit. But it's amazing. Yeah, even I think it's a thing growing up where, especially in my family, you didn't brag, you didn't try to stand out, you tried to just fit right in. But then people like you and I, we don't fit right in, especially musicians that are trying to make art and everything. We're purposefully made the way we are so that we can entertain and push through a lot of this bullshit. But still, God forbid you fucking have the wrong haircut. That person's gonna be there like, what, you fucking think you can, you gonna do that? Oh, never ends.
It's so strange. It's so strange. I mean, yes, you completely expression and freedom of expression is literally everything. Is everything. And the resistance that you feel is complex, because what I've come to know about forms of resistance, or the categories that exist inside that, are jealousy. I mean, forms of jealousy, like, I want to do this, but I can't.
Yeah.
I'm still in this box, but I can't. So, hey, fuck you. And they hate you for that.
Yeah.
And then there's old timers who just don't get it. And
yeah.
Like, what the fuck's this guy doing? You know, and those are the people that have to be led by the hand by their grandchildren and say, hey, it's okay. It's just what it is. What it is. It's okay. You know.
Some of the old people here, there's a lot of older people in Florida, as a lot of people know, and I'll get compliments all the time about just having red hair from older folks who in Pennsylvania, where I moved from, would not have been that way. But here they tend to just be like, oh, that's fun. And I'm like, I'm nervous when I see an old person coming towards me and they're going to say something. I'm like, oh, here we go. And a man, an older, probably 70-year-old man just said, I like your hair. And I was just like, oh, okay. Hey, thanks. And he was like, I would have done the same thing back when I was young. I wish I was still young like you. And I was like, wow, unreal. So yeah, it's amazing but it's all fear-based, as you were saying. It's all fear-based, and it's a shame. And to get rid of that fucking guy always standing there, you know, it's like a.
And did that make you feel empowered when that person said that to you? You're like,
once again, I struggle personally with introversion and social interactions like that, and anxiety when it comes to the social interactions. So I don't know if I completely process it, but it has to happen enough over and over again to a point where I don't feel like everybody's just constantly judging on that level, where it's not just, who do you think you are? But as I've mentioned, this year, especially coming into my own and getting to know myself so much better, I find that these things, at least from personal choice, are very empowering. They're being able to do them. At first was kind of just a little like, oh my God, I can do this thing, and it's kind of crazy. Isn't this crazy? But now I find if I don't have my nails painted, I'm kind of like, I feel more naked, and I'm like, wow, I like it that much. It makes me feel that much more connected to myself. And, you know, there's so many levels, like you said, and we tend to think about all those levels, but my God, it takes me back to high school, where you would see some goth kid with shitty painted nails and you'd be like, look at that fucking kid. And now, now I think about all this different levels of it, and yeah, a lot of different stuff. So I want to talk about, what's that? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it brings me back to also being in school, and like in growing up, that you played football, or if you were like soccer or GAA. For us, it was our national sport.
What's GAA?
Gaelic football.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, we didn't really play hurling, but there's that as well. So yeah, so you had to express it, and if you were lucky, like my brothers, you were good at it. And if you're like me, you're like, yeah, he's okay, but nothing special.
Yeah.
So I always walk the line between, do I want to play football or do I want to play music? Hey, dumbass, you're a musician, but you're just trying to fit in, remember?
Yeah.
So there was this thing, and it was always just trying to fit in, just because you had. And I mean, like this self-discovery thing is still happening to me, like day by day. It's like, oh, okay, so that was the reason why that happened. I never thought of that before. So yeah, I mean, like it only dawned on me in the last few years that I always tried to fit in, but I always had a mask on. I
Yeah.
mean, like not like yeah, and I mean that in the most sincere way. It was like,
Yeah. It was a level of yeah,
yeah, I
acceptance or
mean,
fitting
like
in. And
growing in and coming from where I come from, you become a survival expert.
yeah.
You understand how to survive, and that's like one of the big things that I take away from where I come from, is that level of, okay, no matter where I am, no matter who I'm with, I can sit with them and speak to them,
Yeah.
and the confidence that comes from that is massive. I don't necessarily have an issue with um, public speaking or singing in public or being anywhere or speaking to people that I don't know or instigating a conversation. I don't necessarily have issues with that. And that comes from where I come from. You had to be brash, you had to be on your thinking on your toes always, because somebody's coming behind you with a baseball bat or or something, and whatever. I mean, so I think I don't necessarily have a problem with the performance element.
Yeah.
Where I find I understand what you're saying is my message.
Yeah.
So that's where my um maybe small levels of anxiety comes in. It's like, okay, I want this message to come across
Yeah.
as how I envision it, and then obviously that comes down to like songwriting or whatever. But I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at right now, is like trying to convey my messages how I feel them, and as openly and as honestly as possible,
Yeah.
with the old craft and all that kind of thing. But so I completely understand, and I agree with what you're saying. It's a fun thing, and it's a constant battlefield.
Yeah. Well, I guess in some ways, I not to keep going on about it, but in some ways, growing up and struggling with those things or struggling to find your place, most of the time it was always kind of the mirroring other people and connection, or it was kind of somewhere in the middle, I guess, or going this direction. How can I say this? But I didn't quite get along with the idea of pushing completely in the other direction and feeling empowered by it. Most of the time, as humans, we're social creatures. We want to stay in cliques and we want to stay in communities, and we feel better when we're doing so. But me, myself, feeling isolated most of my life and lonely, like I didn't belong, I find now embracing the weirdness and embracing the stranger parts of myself are actually empowering, as before they kind of all seem to isolate me even more. Now, especially with mediums like this, where we get to talk about just whatever the fuck we want to, and talk about all these things and get them out in the open, it's empowering to. It's just empowering to keep connecting on these weird levels and connecting on stranger levels like that I didn't ever get to associate with, or what I'm saying?
I mean, there's this train of thought that happens when we meet new people, and we all fall victim of, this is just something that I try to be aware of. We all fall victim of gathering information as we meet these people, and that information is just straight away being put into a checklist. Like,
Yeah.
Okay. And then what you're trying to do is you're trying to put this person into a box.
Yeah.
So the thing that you're trying to innately do is change people's thinking of box thinking. But your instinct is to try and make sense of the person that you're speaking to. So what do? You put them in a fucking box.
And it gets worse as you get older, because you quickly just want to be like, I know that person.
Correct. But but one thing that I'm, especially from our conversations as well, is that it's, you know, you don't have to put people in boxes. That's a box type thinking.
Yeah.
And it's counterintuitive to expression, growth, all of these things. I mean, this isn't new to anybody. This is just basic thinking. This is subpar standard basic thinking.
I think it's important stuff to talk about. I think it's also important because recently I saw something from Alan Watts, just this little blip of information. I wanted to talk more about it at length. I'm not going to do that now, but where the constant judgment, especially if you get into meditation, there's a constant judgment of everything. And it doesn't have to, the word judgment is a little harsh in that you're thinking like, fuck that thing, or that thing sucks, or whatever. It's not that. It's just a constant thing your brain does where it's categorizing things, just like you said, put it in a box. You go outside, you see a tree. Some people might see, oh, it's an American sycamore tree. Oh, it's really healthy, or what, instead of actually just being like, that's a thing, and seeing that over there and witnessing what that is in present moment. And he was mentioning, I think it was Alan Watts, he was mentioning seeing people as trees, something I struggle with since I grew up with the parents I grew up with, especially my mother, is judging people very quickly by their physical appearance. And it's not a healthy thing, and it's not good. And most of us tend to do this to different varying degrees, but I don't like it. I don't like seeing somebody and knowing without even trying that my mind's going to be like, look at that fat shit, or look at that person, or look at that girl that's really pretty. Oh, but I don't like her, you know, whatever the fuck you're going through in your mind. So he was talking about seeing people as trees, and as kind of what you're saying, if you're seeing somebody and you're not breaking them down immediately and putting them into boxes, then they have more of a chance to impress you or to have some kind of uniqueness that stands out, whereas you might not have seen that before because you were already like collecting information and processing it. And seeing people as trees, I try to do this now all the time to get in between the gap between my spirit, I guess, my soul, my true essence, and my brain processing information, which is to say, just look at all these people, look at all this amazing stuff, and see them more as they are, even if it's just physical shapes. It's a beautiful thing. It's a really, sounded like Howard Stern. It's a beautiful thing, but it's a really beautiful thing to get in between that and just see them as all these different things. One of the things on this planet is that you get to come here and witness all this stuff. You get to witness all the good shit and the bad shit, and you get to see all of it. And if you can step back and just look at it and not keep judging and processing things, you'll see a lot of amazing stuff. And you get to have that opportunity and witness it. And it's really beautiful. You get to see somebody walking down the street that's glorious and amazing with confidence. And then you get to see somebody that's missing a leg and they're hunched over and they're homeless. It's amazing if you can just get in there and just witness it and see it, and especially know that you're lucky having the opportunity to witness it and to pick up on it. So that's
amazing. I concur with everything you just said, and it made me think of a time where my friend was letting me hear new songs. You've let me hear new songs before, yeah. And the first thing I always do is thank you, because as a musician, even take that away from it, what I do and who we are. If I'm the first person that somebody thinks of and they want to show me some creation of theirs, some expression of art or their thoughts, their inner thoughts, I thank them. I'm thank you, because coming from I guess you never really have an amount of how you were thought of growing up, or did anybody ever think of me, or so that's where that comes from. Is I always make a point of thanking that person for letting me hear that that first expression or that thought process or something, because I mean, man, in a world where everything just seems to be, it's just the being is just everywhere, you know. And somebody comes along that wants to create something new,
Yeah.
and you get to hear it first.
Yeah.
Or that's mind blowing, man. And not to get too like out of context with it, but yeah, I mean, it's a moment, and I think that comes from the arts or something, or how I express myself, or how I like to be around people who aren't afraid to express themselves.
It takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to do that, and then knowing that somebody was vulnerable enough to ask you. I never really thought about it that way. It's definitely a very special thing. And you're just kind of like what I was saying. It's you should remember that you're privileged to be able to witness such a thing instead of just judging it right away. And a lot of times when people want to send me things, I always think that they want something from me, so it probably tends to ruin the experience. Whereas somebody, yep.
I mean, that exists. I mean, let's not, as well as we're speaking about this from a very open perspective, there are others who don't see it, and who are possibly very opportunistic about their thinking, and we've both come into contact with those people a lot, probably more than I would ever have liked to. So I understand that, and of course it's happy and healthy to have walls and boundaries.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's very key to even to progress. You have to be able to like, no, thank you, But I mean, I like, it's not. I mean, yeah, even it's strange, even like street performers. I mean, often as a musician, if I see a street performer, I'm like, it's my duty to stand here and listen to you for a bit. That's just what I'm supposed to do. So I will give you that time. And some are great and some are total shite, but I mean, let's be real, it is what it is. But yeah, there's that room for growth, and that thing. One of the weird things is having this conversation. I'm always very aware about how much better I could do in everything. So that's why I'm not very keen on like we talked about before, is given too many bits of critique or whatever. Is because I'm like, hey, I can always do better. And there are people in my life who are not shy in telling me that. So, that's why I always have healthy boundaries.
I definitely learned a long time ago that it's much more important to come from a place where you don't know as much as you think you do, because that always opens you up to being able to learn more about everything, instead of trying to come from this place like, I got my shit together, I know this. Maybe there's some times where you can try to take the reins and confidently guide something along by doing that, but most of the time with me, I like to exist in a place where I don't know, and then people can just fill me in, and it's much better. I want to talk about because we talked about this a little bit kind of at length. I think it's really important to continue talking about. It's especially important to me, and as I build an audience, hopefully for people to hear about things like this, especially considering you were talking about your relationship with your father, with your mother, the systems that you grew up in, which are very difficult. At some point you have three kids. You have 2 sons and a daughter, correct? And one of your kids was non-speaking, and you went through a lot of difficulty, and then finally found out that he was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. And I'll let you say these in case I'm saying any of these things incorrectly, but I think it's important to hear a little bit more about the story, because I find it fascinating, and I think at the end of the day, it's just amazing how much it's done for you as a person, especially considering, how, thinking for a second how your father or your family might have handled that situation. And now you get this situation, and you get to, there's just all the levels of it. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, 3 kids, beautiful children, very expressive kids. So when our second born came along, yeah, we had an inkling that, we all we had was our firstborn to go by.
Right. Okay.
Like it's different growing up. I was around babies a lot, babysitting and different things, because that's what you are when you're a middle child. You're a babysitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be a parent's entirely different. So yeah, my wife and I, we figured, maybe this is a trait. We don't know. I certainly didn't know anything about autism or Asperger's or the spectrum or anything like that. I was aware that it existed, and
But it's so clouded in mystery. I mean, it still is now.
yeah, I think you only have a deep, obviously, but you only have a deep appreciation if you're invested, because it's like anything else. I don't need to know about Lamborghinis. I'm never going to own one.
Lamborghinis, yeah, absolutely, absolutely understanding. Why am I going to read about Lamborghinis? Yeah,
yeah. We had a health visitor come who's standard here. They come and they do checks on the kids and the mother to make sure everything's okay. And we had one come and checked my wife and made a passing comment about my son, and which I later found out wasn't her place, because there's a guide and a directive to follow before you can make outlandish statements.
Yeah.
So then made the statement about our son. And
how old was he?
Few months old.
And he just was non-speaking, so you just thought he was really quiet.
No, well, the thing was, there was no eye contact, so you could walk into a room, and with our youngest daughter, she would clock you straight away.
Right.
She walked into the room and followed you around, and if you called her name, she would look to you. And whereas with, you have a kid, you're like, doing your dad duties, and you're playing with a kid, and you're like, I think maybe he's got something wrong with his hair, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's go get it checked. But no, it was the wouldn't clock you into a room if you were standing here talking. Whatever you said, he no interest whatsoever. More so an inability to take directive or anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this thing was said, and listen, I'll not lie to you. When that health visitor left, my first instinct was rage. Whatever my rage is, it was like inner, how dare you,
Yeah.
How could you say that? She's not supposed to say that. And then me and my wife just cried with each other.
Yeah.
And consoled each other, and felt sorry for each other, and felt sorry for our child. And we didn't even know what it meant.
Yeah.
This person just said this thing. And then there was a few follow-ups, and there was a few other things. And then as the months went on, it became more and more clear that this person was right.
Yeah.
And then comes acceptance, and that's hard because you don't really know what you're accepting. You don't know what, and then guilt. This is my fault.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of that, and you mentioned it being connected to some of the religious ties and stuff where you might have done something wrong, and you mentioned your wife too. Like you guys might have done something or did the wrong things, did do the right things. I mean, God knows, if you chase it far enough, you could tie it to everything. That one time I was mean to that guy, Steve. Shouldn't have been mean to Steve. It can just go down a rabbit hole.
That's the joys of growing up Catholic, and having those fears and having those different things in your mind, and you're always taught that everything's coming back to you. Everything's coming back. So yeah, the guilt definitely was a bigger stage for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that started making me change as a person, and like my youthful defiance started coming back, and I was like, what's happening here? Then I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm done with this. I'm done feeling sorry for myself. I'm done not knowing what this is. because even though I had been told these things, my wife was straight on the ball. Like, okay, okay,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is what's happening.
She was methodically figuring out what to do next, and
still is, and it has been the same ever since. Where
right.
I'm in the corner sulking, like
You were processing it emotionally. Yes, I understand.
And she's looking back saying, "Is there any chance?" Like, you know, um, but yeah, I methodically and figuratively took my head out of my ass and started being like, okay, like, okay. And then I really kicked into gear. I was like, you know what? What's the worst? What is the worst? Let's weigh this up.
Yeah.
And let's learn this and weigh this up. So my wife knew a lot more about this than I did. So she started telling me and talking to me and coaching me. So weird, because I always seen myself as the coach and the let's go do this, and you know, but if it wasn't for her, I would never have seen things the way I did. And so anyway, yeah, so that whole thing happened. But then I mean, figuring what you're dealing with out is just one part of the equation.
Right.
Because then you actually have to deal with the thing.
Yeah, and the interactions with other people and yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, the thing being autism, they always talk about a spectrum because it's so vast.
Yeah.
It's so vast and intricate. And one thing that can be true for this person might have the same look as this person, but it's not true.
Right.
It's the elements that are different.
Yeah.
And everything in between is a plethora of difference also.
Yeah.
But then in where I come from, it's like, you mean the funny child, the wee fella doesn't speak. Jesus, he's, you know, and it's this thinking, this weird backward thinking of, I mean, you obviously have bad genes. I mean, your genes are obviously fucked up. And you're like, well, no, it's got nothing to do with that at all. I mean,
well, not to mention too, I mean, this can be a very beautiful thing, and there's people that are making amazing strides. Greta Thunberg, I don't remember if she's autistic or she's has Asperger's, but there's amazing stuff that a lot of these folks are doing, and obviously it has barely anything to do with genes. I forgot my entire train of thought because I had to think of Greta Thunberg.
Okay, well, I can tell you this. It's very true. One of the main factors, which we have spoke about before, is how my son and my kids in general, but having to relearn parenting. So I had parenting figured out with my first child.
Yeah.
Or as much as you can have parenting figured out.
Yes.
You know, I did that, and then with our second child, it was a whole rebirth. Okay, I have to rebirth myself for this because I don't know what this is. Okay, so there was that part. And that experience of learning who he was as a child made me look in to myself even further and think, if you think this is the level that's going to get you past, you're wrong. You need to go deeper. You need to go harder. You need to be more caring. You need to be more emotionally connected. And that's why I'm the person I am today, because I still see parents and people dismiss children with autism as being disorderly, or, you know, that's the key thing. Oh, they're a bad child, a bad kid.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and saying, it's the only time when I think violence is the option.
Well, not only that, but they're not only seeing autistic people or highly sensitive or any of these things, but they're also treating themselves, other children, other people with the same level of disrespect or same closed off mind, where they're just not, I talked about it recently, where people having the same experience somewhere can be having a vastly different experience. And you have to be conscious of these things and start to understand. And I think there's, from a spiritual perspective, if you can get into that at all, I think that's a reason why a lot of these souls are coming here, to keep ushering in new paradigms, new beliefs, things like what you're saying, which is why it's so powerful to talk about, that it's changed you so much fundamentally and made you so much more of an empathetic person, so much more of an understanding person, maybe more patient. Those things are absolutely needed throughout everyone so much. And whereas
One thing, apologies.
No, go ahead.
All right. One thing that was always said to me was, I have a very deep, bellowing voice.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it can be very intimidating. This is before you even met me. And it's just that, going back to being a child, the middle kid,
Yeah.
in order to be heard, I needed to be loud.
Yeah.
If I had anything to say. So I carried that on. But a little bit of self-discovery for me was, my son that's a trigger for him.
Right. Because it seems very oppressive and
Yes.
frightening.
Yes. So even, and by the way, I'm not talking about like screaming in the house or shouting or anything like that. I'm talking about, if I was in one room and I needed my wife and she was in a different room,
right,
I would call out.
Yeah.
And something that I would think would be so normal was triggering my son
Right.
into repressing himself further,
Right.
and would bring him to tears. And I would call his mom,
mm-hmm.
come downstairs and see him crying on the sofa.
Yeah.
And I would be like, what's wrong? Did something happen? What's wrong? And
yeah.
It was only, but we haven't even spoke about like the non-verbal thing yet. But I mean, to finish that little thing off, is that he then got to a stage where he was able to tell me too loud, too loud, too loud. Right. So it was triggering him. And that, again, it was a relearning thing for me. I was like, you asshole. Are you like, did you just come up the river in a bubble? Like, what you're supposed to do this. And
you asshole.
There's like this normal thing, okay, there's this modern thing about empaths are weak, or empaths are less than, or that their place in society is soft, or these types of things. But let me tell you this, if you knew where I came from, we had spoke about before, weak and soft were never mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's not, and like there are some people who see it as weak. They hear how I speak now, they hear the words that I choose to speak with, and they're like, this guy, what's this guy?
Yeah.
You know? And you're like, no, you're so wrong about that. I just choose, because I choose to wear a beard and I'm a big dude. I'm like, I do not need to choose. I do not need to intimidate people any more than I already do.
Yes.
Yeah, you know. So yeah. It's like one of these things. So with my son, it was like, and by the way, it's a constant
evolving
to try and get right all the time.
Right.
You know, like just, I mean, anything. It can be like walking in and a door was closed a certain way, or I was sitting in this seat and I'm sitting over there, and why are you sitting over there now? You're sitting here. I don't understand this. Mm-hmm. You know, so there's a conformity that happens, and just there's, you know, and you could even look in on it and say, oh, it's just order. He just likes an order, things to be in a particular way. And yes, absolutely. But when that thing's not in order, that week is ruined. That week's, and you just call that a week off, because now school's not happening. Now I know when we take him into school that there's going to be a breakdown at the classroom, or, you know, these things. And like, don't even get me started on school. It's like,
yeah, it's just once again the evolving process of yeah.
So it's a fun thing, and just to circle back on the reason why we started speaking about it, it has it has made me, and but my wife was always that person anyway. She was always the anything to do with kids, and she's there. She
Yeah.
loves it,
Mhm.
and her kids, it's just she lives for them. Everything she does revolves around them, and it's constantly teaching me and like learning, like teaching me about certain things. Did you know that XYZ can be the reason why this is happening? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I just thought it was because the light wasn't on, or like something. So it's so yeah. The reason why I have to stay in a certain mode is because I know that things can change in a heartbeat. So it's and I have to say it doesn't leave me anxious. It doesn't leave me where it used to leave me very anxious and very confused and angry and resentful. Like, what did I do? And then I'm like, hey, asshole, shut up. This has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So take whatever you're thinking about and lock it in a box and bury that box.
Right.
Okay. Because whatever you're thinking and doing, this isn't about you.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's that thinking that I had to destroy. Get rid of that thinking. Thankfully it didn't hang about too long, but anytime it did, it was like the thing in the corner, that evil thing in the corner.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then you're very aware of it, and you're like, oh, I did that thing again.
Yeah, I still process a lot of guilt and shame in my life, and continue to catch it all the time. But do you remember the moment where your son started to kind of speak, and you got to have that experience?
Yeah, I mean, a long time had passed, and there was,
No, did he? I should say, did he make audible sounds?
yeah.
First. Okay, so he was trying to communicate in certain ways.
So the very first thing that he did was laugh.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was because we were all fooling about in our living room, and my daughter was jumping from seat to seat,
Right.
and just randomly, this child who always sat quiet just started laughing. And I'm so thankful for modern technology because I got my phone out and I recorded it
Yeah.
because it was the biggest thing. It was like the biggest thing. I mean,
Yeah.
this was a big breakthrough in our house. And when we heard that, we were like,
Oh, yeah. It makes me emotional hearing about it.
no. And that's all I needed, man. That's how I live life. I just need that possibility. And then I can, if the possibility's there, now I can, okay. So then that happened. And, I had went through a stage where me and my wife were training, like trying to get our daughter to speak. And she was talking, she was a little bit late in speaking also, I have to say. But I mean, she was counting, like she was 2 years of age and counting up to 30 and all of these different things, and super intelligent, and has went on to be a super intelligent little lady, who's, teaching me this week about all the different spells in Harry Potter. And I'm like, oh. So with the dad, you're like, okay, now I want to learn this because I want to impress her. So I'm learning different things, and so with my son that happened, and yeah, I was like, okay, so what we need to do is this, because what we had was a lot of outside input into what we were doing.
Right.
Because there's a thing that happens when somebody knows you don't know something.
Right. They want to keep.
And they try and impress upon you the things that they think they know about that thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but this is okay. I thank you for taking the time to speak to me. But everything's not the same. Everything's different. And if I approach this with, oh, but Tom said to do this, and you're like, no, that's just somebody's opinion.
Yeah.
What you need to understand is that whatever happens with this one individual child is just this one individual child. And when I stopped impressing myself upon the thing that we needed to fix, things started growing and getting better.
That's one of the most powerful things that anybody's ever said. I want to take a clip of that, just keep replaying it over and over again. So when you stopped trying to impress upon what it was supposed to be, then you just let it go. Then it started to grow, and it's just wonderful, wonderful thing.
And then things happened, and then movement happened, and then walking happened, and then all of a sudden, mom and dad started happening. And all of these little beautiful things and memories that we have. I mean, there was a lot of tears during that stage, because it was like, okay, so first it was noises, and then it was laughing, and now we have words, and then now we have sentences. Oh, and now we have, and then everything just, the dark doom and gloom that happened with, and this is why I have so much admiration for parents in general, but specifically parents of autistic and children with Asperger's, is that it's a unique thing. And if you choose to let that one thing define you, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah,
that's what it was. I can say that from my own perspective. If you choose to let that one thing define you, then all the outside noise is going to make your room really small.
Yeah.
So what I needed to do was break free of all that, and say, okay, you know what? I got this. We got this. And then we went on a discovery path of all these things that you can do to, and we had some great help from official bodies.
Yeah.
And, and there's still a lot to be learned here of these things. And even though these great people stand up on mountains and scream it out, people just aren't quite ready to. It's getting better, I have to say, though. Yeah, and then all of a sudden we had a child who was able to say, I'm not okay today.
That's amazing.
And
even have a kid, I don't know if I was able to even express on that level for a long time that I would even know whether or not I was okay, just defining myself with everything that was going around me. And I think for us, even as older adults now, it can be hard to recognize when you're not okay. Even just for a day, for a week, I still have a lot of growing to do in those ways. Finding out about high sensitivity, not to bogart the conversation, but I find out now how much I'm consistently and constantly overwhelmed. I never knew that. Never associated it with that. I just knew that I wasn't feeling that well and would just push through it and try to persevere and then break down, I guess, at certain times. But my God, man, to even know that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we, everything has changed in the last 15 to 20 years, drastically, how we consume life, how we do things.
Yeah.
We're not here to consume so much information as quickly as we do. The processing unit needs to be stable for this to happen. The problem is our processing unit never knows what it has to be.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, it was this thing yesterday, and now it's this thing today. Hold on. Okay, so what I'm a big advocate of is through learning, having an autistic son, through learning that, like, just slow things down a bit. Mm-hmm. Just step away for a bit. Now, what you said previously to that about how to recognize when you're not having a good day, that's the thing. If I'm able to figure that out, I'm writing a book. Because even though I speak how I speak, and me and my wife are always present and fixing and making sure everything's all good, and I don't like. Yes, we try self-care, we try workout, we do these things. My wife's a workout freak. That's how she gets it out, and that's how she processes. And I play music and I work out and do these things. I'm like, yeah, but sometimes it's just good to have a moment of reflection, and without sounding too inwardly, it's just good to have a moment of reflection and be like, okay, let's take stock here.
Yeah.
How were we last month? Okay. How are we now? Did we actively do anything different to fix that thing that we didn't like?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that's how I see life. And these little things that come up, like, especially when we do music, we're always like, okay, what's the next thing? How do I get X amount of subscribers? How do I get such and such? You're like, okay, the metric driven thing in music is big and it's real and it's how you get your music out, and that's fine. And I'm all for it, even though I'm a rebel to the cause. But that reflection of how am I this week? How are you this week? What's happening? Are we good? Is the thing, and I think it's important because I grew up in a house where self-reflection was non-existent.
Yeah.
And it was, how do we get through this day? How does this day stop being what it is?
And then the
And
people,
like,
the people you're looking up to are all saying that, and they're trying to get through it. And and you're emulating that behavior, and it's a lot of shite, as you would say.
listen, it's and I have, okay, so, and this is, I'm instantly brought to a song that I wrote about breaking the chains and stopping the patterns and all of these different things. And by the way, it's very important to note that these things, the cards that life deal you are they're never your fault. It's just what it is. And how I think. And by the way, I say these things, and I'm very aware of how long it took me to get here.
Yeah.
This position, to be able to speak like this. And it's not just like, hey, this guy's whatever, but no. There's a reason for the way I speak, or how I think the way I think. And there's lots of people like me. You're a person like me also. You think like this. Your circumstance is just what it is. It's just what it is. You've got two choices. You continue the cycle. If you like the cycle, you're happy to continue it. It's okay. That's all good. If you want to change it, change it. Quit grab assing, quit bitching about it. It's never good. Like, one thing will never happen by bitching about something is positive change.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So once you take proactive decisions on that, I mean, this comes from learning and understanding about autism. I made proactive decisions after a series of very negative decisions.
Yeah.
And it the fact that it was a surprise to me that it was working is stupid, because I'm supposed to be a smart person and know these things. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. So you didn't do the thing that you were doing, and now everything changed. No shit, Sherlock. But again, sometimes I just move how I move, and I'm sure my wife was like, soon it'll drop, it'll come soon. The penny will drop with him soon, So yeah, man, fun times.
There's a book I'm still kind of reading, and I started not too long ago, and I should put a link to it in the description, because essentially what you were just saying was very relevant to it. In that the where you are, he was talking about it in terms of where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be and where you're supposed to be, and that continues through life, and that is in your past. I'm not saying this very gracefully yet, but essentially the times where maybe you were bullied and you were getting in fights, I was, those things were happening exactly as they were supposed to happen. If you keep going back through your head and trying to fight with them, or hope that person gets hit by a flaming bus or whatever you're doing, you have to recognize that those things were equally as important as the good things that were important as everything. It was all happening exactly like it was supposed to happen. And what it did for me to hear somebody saying those things is consistently take more weight and guilt off of myself, because I tend to keep carrying those things, especially right now in my life. And recognize that even when you were not at your best, or you thought you weren't at your best in your life, you were at your best. Things were happening exactly the way they were supposed to. The only reason you're able to know that you weren't at your best is because you've evolved enough to look back and be like, oh yeah, that wasn't who I was, and now I am, and now I'm able to look back and be like, that, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it was a really powerful thing just to hear that from another source, and to know that, you know, everything's right. You're continuing to evolve exactly as you're supposed to, and these events, whether they've been predetermined or not, are happening just as they're supposed to, so that you can continue to evolve at the rate that you need to. And bad situations will keep recycling and coming back into your life, so that you can learn from them until you're done with them. Bad people, all that kind of stuff. And it's not all bad. It's the way it's supposed to be. And I want to touch on your music here really quick, because I want you to be able to have at least some form of platform. And we're going to be working on something together here pretty intensely over the next few weeks. So you're a singer-songwriter. I should let you say these things, but you're an amazing musician, storyteller. You've got this great voice, somebody that I respect and look up to as a musician. And yeah, you have something coming up. I'll let you talk about it.
Appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words also. Yeah, I mean, the storytelling vibe is something that I'm very keen on to press in my art. Is all of these things that we've just spoken about can be, if they could be told in stories through the medium of music, that's great by me. But yeah, so I have an EP coming up, and yeah, once you and I started clicking the way we did, because I'm sure there was a stage of, you know, here's another weirdo from the internet messaging me, and I get it too. Like, but excuse me. Once we started clicking it, I was like, it's so weird to me, and I'll get back on point. But it's so weird to me that people that are so distant in space and time,
Yeah,
can be so on the same level. And it got me thinking about like wavelengths and how we all function on different wavelengths, and maybe we're all just wavelengths inside a wavelength, and we all just get it, you know, or whatever. But that's how I genuinely think. But so once I was like, and it's so weird to talk about the boxes and all of these things they're ticking, but we're all guilty of doing it. And I was like, you know, Sterling is actually somebody who I feel like I could make something really great with. So we both know, like, we both have our musical abilities in place. And once I was like, there's lots of people you can work with, you know,
yeah.
to do a thing, just to do a thing.
Yes.
You know, and I'm probably putting too much pressure on this project that we're doing. But I was like, you know what? This is right. This is the right decision. So I made the decision to fly out to you, and we're gonna cut my EP Battleborn with each other. And these are songs that I have accumulated and written. They're all life experiences, and I just want to basically portray them and give them the best birth that they can have.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, having discussed at great length music and our inspirations and our abilities and what we do, and I've spoken to you at great length about your abilities in terms of production, and which is, and I hate to like toot your horn here, but it's amazing the things that I've heard from you, man.
Thank you.
So, and you know, and I believe that, and I truly believe that there are musicians and they click together, and there's a reason for them clicking together, is because they don't click with any other musicians that are happening, and it's just a thing. And that's another weird thing to me, is that I'm supposed to like everybody. I'm supposed to, but there are wavelengths that I can't vibe with, and it's all good.
Yeah.
But I vibe with you, and we're going to make some kick-ass music pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I give you a pretty hard task, and yeah, I think
yeah, there's some nerves about it. I definitely I think that the creative process and everything will go really well, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of things will continue to flow. You called me a creative powerhouse the other day. I want to say it like you, powerhouse, but you called me that the other day, and I appreciated that. And it kind of affected me in terms of some of my life things that I'm going through right now, because I recognize, oh my God, I'm somebody that can create like a motherfucker all day, all kinds of stuff. You give me a task and I can just sit there and come up with stuff all the time. But sometimes until you don't hear these things from people, you don't attribute them to strengths. You just kind of like, you just don't think of yourself that way. And God knows right now I need to have my horn tooted every once in a while so that I remember that I'm a special person or a unique person, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you, sir. I've taken enough of your time. Here's hoping that this has been recording. It does say up the top it's been recording, but we talked at length about a lot of great things. I deeply respect the fact that you're able to get into this different information with me, that you would agree to do this with me and be my first person to do this. I think you're a beautiful, unique, talented, dude. I'm very happy to know you. And I'm very excited about what we're going to do here and everything. So
the future is bright.
All right, buddy. Well,
and all of those things right back at you, by the way, all of those things right back at you. And you're probably too nice to say it, but you've got some pretty interesting stuff coming up yourself, which I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different things that are happening, but this is about your moment, Mr. Ritchi Ray. So thank you again.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, man.
You're very, very welcome.
It's probably late there, right? What time is it? Like 9?
Yeah, it's just after. It's okay. Yeah, we're having like pretty weird storms here at the minute, so there's a trampoline I need to go out into the back garden and tie down.
What a weird thing to say. That's a great way to sign off too. There's a weird trampoline in the backyard. As with most of us, there's just this fucking trampoline in the backyard. Keeps showing up, by the way. And I got to go out and just get rid of it. So, all right, buddy. It was good talking to you. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.